I was tired, broke, and ready to log off for the night. Then this rich-looking guy hops in my back seat. Polite, calm. Something felt off. By the end of the ride, he turns to me and says, "Want to see something crazy?" That's when everything changed. He handed me keys to a mansion. If you love real jaw-dropping stories from everyday people, hit that subscribe button, like the video, and turn on the notification bell. You won't believe what happened at the end of this ride. It was one of those nights where the city felt like it was exhaling. Soft, slow, a little sad. I'd been driving for hours, chasing rides to make rent, barely keeping my eyes open. My hands ached from gripping the wheel too tight, my shoulders stiff from stress and sitting. The streetlights looked blurry, not from the rain, but from my own tiredness. I remember thinking, one more ride, just one more, and I'm done. That's always the lie I tell myself. But this time, I meant it. My gas tank was low, my patience was lower, and my body was begging me to go home. See, being a black woman driving Uber at night isn't exactly glamorous. People either don't notice you or they notice too much, if you know what I mean. You get all types. Drunk party girls crying about their exes, men who try too hard to flirt, folks who treat you like you're invisible until they need something. And I take it all with a half smile, 'cause I've got bills waiting, and this car is my office, my hustle, my lifeline. I was already deep into the shift, and honestly, I was over it. No tips, rude passengers, and a busted Bluetooth speaker. I was about to log off when a request popped up. The pickup location? Some street I'd never heard of, tucked between two bougie neighborhoods. 5-star rating. Just a quick 15-minute ride. I hesitated. My gut told me to go home, but my wallet said, "Girl, take the ride." So I tapped accept. Didn't think much of it. It was just one more ride, but something about it felt different, like the night had been waiting for this one. So I pull up to the location, right? It's quiet, too quiet for the part of town I'm in. Streets lined with tall trees, big houses hidden behind gates, the kind of place where porch lights cost more than my rent. But there he is, standing on the corner like he's waiting for a bus. Not what I expected. He looked out of place. Clean-cut white guy, probably mid-40s, tall, with that expensive kind of stillness. You know what I mean? Like someone who doesn't have to rush because the world bends around his schedule. He was wearing a black jacket, neat slacks, shoes too shiny for this late at night. Not flashy, but clearly moneyed. But something about his posture, like he'd been standing there too long, felt off. He got in the back seat and gave me a polite nod. "Evening," he said. His voice was calm, warm even. Not too friendly, not cold either, just smooth, like he was used to being listened to. I greeted him back, confirmed his destination, and started the trip. He didn't say much at first, just stared out the window. I kept checking my mirror, not because I was scared, but because I couldn't figure him out. Most people either sink into their phones or want to talk your ear off. He did neither. He was just watching the world go by, like he wasn't really in it. A few minutes in, he asked, "You drive this late often?" I said yeah, told him it's when the bills don't care what time it is. He chuckled, not in a mocking way, more like he got it, like he'd been there once maybe. He said, "Tough gig, but you seem grounded." I didn't know what to say to that, so I just shrugged and smiled. Then he asked, "Do you like doing this?" Now, most people don't ask that. Not genuinely. Usually it's small talk, like asking the weather. But he waited for an answer. I told him honestly, it's not my dream, but it pays. And sometimes I meet interesting people. He nodded like that made perfect sense. Then he got quiet again, and after a pause, he said softly, "You ever feel like no one really sees you?" It hit me kind of sideways. 'Cause yeah, I do, all the time. But I didn't say that. I just glanced at him in the mirror, and his face, it wasn't casual anymore. It was tired, like he'd been carrying that question around for a long time. I didn't answer right away, and he didn't push it. We just sat there in the quiet hum of the car, riding through the city like ghosts, passing through lives we didn't belong to. But something about that moment stayed with me. That quiet question from a stranger felt louder than anything else that night, and I had no idea what was coming next. We were about 10 minutes into the drive when things started getting weird. Not bad weird, just different. He leans forward slightly, not in a creepy way, just enough to be heard, and says, "Hey, do you mind taking a detour?" Now, usually when people say that, it's because they think they know a shortcut or they want to stop by a gas station or something. But before I could even ask where to, he adds, "I'll double the fare." Double the fare? I mean, I was tired but not stupid. I asked, "Where are we headed?" He gave a soft smile, real calm, like he was inviting me into a secret. "Just a little past where I was going. I'll show you." I hesitated for a second, but something about his tone wasn't threatening. It was lonely. So I nodded and said, "All right." The app was still running, so, worst case, I could cancel and bounce, but curiosity had me hooked. As we drove further out, he started talking again. This time, a little more open. He told me he used to work in tech, sold a company a few years back, made more money than he could ever spend. I asked why he was riding in an Uber if he had all that, jokingly, of course, and he said, "Sometimes I just don't want to be driven. I want to ride, you know?" I didn't really get it, but I nodded like I did. Then he said, "Everyone around me either works for me, wants something from me, or pretends to care. It's exhausting." His voice cracked just a little, not enough to break, but enough to show there was something real under there. Then he got quiet again. I thought maybe the conversation was over, but he asked, "What would you do if money wasn't a problem?" Like dead serious, not in a dreamy what if way, but like he needed to know. I told him I'd probably travel, start something small of my own, maybe a mobile hair salon or a little boutique for natural products, something that was mine, you know? He listened, like really listened, and then said, "Sounds like you've thought about that a lot." I just laughed and said, "Don't we all?" The silence that followed wasn't uncomfortable. It was heavy, like the car was full of things neither of us had said out loud before. Then, just as we turned onto a wide, private-looking road, he looked at me through the mirror again and said, "You ever want to see what lonely looks like with 8 bedrooms and a pool?" I blinked. "Excuse me?" He smiled faintly and said, "I'm serious. Just drop me there. You can see for yourself." And I didn't know why, but I said yes. Maybe it was the way he asked. Maybe it was the night. Or maybe deep down, I knew this wasn't just another ride. Something was unfolding, and I had a front row seat. We kept driving for what felt like an eternity, my headlights cutting through the dark, winding roads lined with tall trees. The houses started getting bigger, flashier. We passed gates, big wrought iron things, the kind you only see in movies. I glanced at the GPS, wondering where the hell we were, but it was like the map didn't even want to tell me. It just pointed straight ahead. Finally, we turned down a narrow private drive, and the car slowed down. I couldn't help but feel like I was entering a different world, the kind you hear about but never expect to see up close. The driveway was long, stretching out before us like a red carpet to some fairy tale I didn't belong in. And then there it was, the mansion, massive, seriously. It looked like something you'd see on the cover of one of those luxury living magazines. White stone, perfectly manicured lawns, a front door as tall as the house itself. It was perfect in every way. Too perfect, like a house meant to be looked at, but never lived in. He turned to me then, his face still that quiet calm. "We're here," he said, like he was just telling me we'd made it to the grocery store, not a freaking palace. "Okay," I said, more to myself than to him. My heart was thumping in my chest, but I didn't know why. Part of me was thinking, just take the money, drop him off, and get out of here. But there was something about this house, about him, that made me pause. I felt like I was on the edge of something, about to step off a cliff without knowing what was below. He opened the door before I could say anything. "Come on in for a minute. You've seen my life on the outside. Now I want you to see the inside." I hesitated. Part of me said, "Nope, nope, nope." Another part of me, the part that had been curious from the start, said, "What's the harm?" So I followed him, watching the way his silhouette moved in front of the massive doors, the sound of our footsteps echoing on the marble floor as we entered. The front hall was so big I couldn't even take it all in. The walls were lined with huge abstract paintings, all in black and gold. There was a giant staircase that seemed to float up into the air, twisting around like something out of an old European movie. This is your place?" I asked, not sure what else to say. The house felt like a museum, too perfect to be real, like it was meant to be looked at, not lived in. He nodded, his face unreadable. That it used to be, but now it's just too much, too big, too empty. We walked through a massive living room with leather sofas that looked like they'd never been sat on. The silence was overwhelming, not peaceful, just lonely. I felt a pit in my stomach. I didn't know if it was the house or the man or the strange situation, but something didn't feel right. We passed through a long hallway, and he led me to a small study near the back of the house. He stood there, looking around like he was seeing it for the first time. "I don't need all this. I'm not this guy anymore." I looked at him, wondering what the hell he meant by that. When he turned to me, his eyes soft but serious. "I want you to have it, all of it." I blinked, feeling like the ground had shifted beneath me. "Wait, what?" He stepped forward, pulled out a set of keys, and handed them to me. "I'm leaving. I don't need this place anymore. You take it. It's yours." I froze. The weight of those keys in my hand felt like a burden I wasn't ready for. But he was serious. There was no joke, no trick in his eyes. And just like that, the whole night shifted again. I stood there, completely frozen, staring at the set of keys in my hand. They were heavy, real, undeniable. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. I mean, who the hell just gives away a mansion? This wasn't a joke. I could see it in his eyes. No smirk. No sign that this was some elaborate prank. Just calmness. Just quiet. Like he was waiting for me to understand something I hadn't yet. "You're serious?" I asked. Not because I didn't believe him, but because I couldn't believe him. This was insane. This was the kind of thing you only read about in tabloids. "You want me to take your house?" He nodded slowly, like he'd been thinking about this for a long time. "I don't need it anymore. I don't need all the things that come with it. The space, the isolation. It's too much. I've spent so much of my life building all of this, but I've never really had someone to share it with. Now I'm just leaving to start over." I opened my mouth to say something, anything, but the words wouldn't come. I looked down at the keys again, the cold metal pressing into my palm like a weight I wasn't ready to carry. He smiled softly, a sad kind of smile. "Look, I'm not asking for anything in return. I just want to know someone will live here, someone who actually sees it, who can make it feel like a home. I know it's crazy, but I'm serious. I want you to have it, the house, everything in it." "Why me?" I finally managed to ask. Why are you giving this to me? He sighed, his shoulders slumping like he was tired of carrying a load no one else could understand. I don't know. Maybe it's because you're the first person I've met in a long time who's real, who's not trying to impress me or get something from me. You don't care about the money. You didn't treat me like I'm some kind of prize or opportunity. I shifted on my feet, still feeling like I was on some sort of movie set where nothing made sense but everything was happening anyway. You don't even know me, I said, my voice quiet, unsure. What if this is what if this is just some kind of trick? He shook his head, looking almost amused. I thought about that, but it's not a trick. I'm giving you the keys because I believe you'll use them differently than anyone else would. You're not in this for a handout. You've got your own dreams, your own hustle, and I respect that. I couldn't argue with that, but none of this felt real. It felt like a dream I wasn't sure I was ready to wake up from. I looked at the mansion again, the big staircase, the huge windows, the quiet, empty halls. What was I supposed to do with this? Was I really supposed to just take it? Before I could speak, he stepped closer, his voice barely above a whisper. You don't have to decide now. Just think about it. But I'm serious. It's yours. No strings. And with that, he turned and walked out of the room, leaving me standing there alone, holding a set of keys that felt more like a challenge than a gift. I stood in the study, staring out at the darkened house, still unsure of what to do next. My head was spinning, my thoughts a whirlwind of confusion, disbelief, and something that might have been fear. The weight of those keys felt heavier with every passing second. I stayed in that room for what felt like forever, the keys still gripped tightly in my hand. I couldn't move. I couldn't think straight. It felt like the floor beneath me had cracked open, and I was just standing there, frozen in the middle of something that didn't make any sense. I could still hear his footsteps echoing down the hall, and in the silence that followed, the house seemed to grow louder. The creaks of the old wood, the hum of distant air conditioning. The space was so big, so empty, I felt like I was suffocating, alone. Yet, the strangest thing was that I wasn't alone at all. I had just been handed the keys to someone else's life. What kind of person does that? What kind of man hands over everything he's built just because he's tired? He didn't even try to sell it, didn't ask for anything in return. No contracts, no promises, just, here. It's yours. I stood there, still holding those keys like they were some kind of punishment. It wasn't just the house that was throwing me off. It was him. The way he spoke, the way he said, "You're real," the way he saw me, really saw me, when nobody else did. That look in his eyes, like he'd been carrying the weight of something far heavier than money for far too long. I didn't know him. Hell, I didn't even know his name. And yet here I was, standing in his mansion, holding the future of his life in my hands. I left the study and walked slowly through the hall, trying to make sense of all this. The walls seemed to close in around me with every step. Was I being set up? Was this some twisted game? I pulled out my phone and searched for his name. No hits. His number didn't pop up either. Nothing. He wasn't some tech mogul with a public profile or a social media presence. He was nobody in the eyes of the world. I texted a friend. I think I'm losing my mind. I just got offered a mansion, and I don't know if it's real. No reply. I didn't expect one. I couldn't even begin to explain what had happened. I stepped outside onto the back patio, trying to get my bearings. The yard was huge, stretching out behind the house with a pool that glistened under the moonlight. Everything was pristine, untouched. It looked like a photo, one of those perfect vacation spots you see online, but know you'll never visit. Yet here I was, standing in the middle of it, trying to figure out what the hell I was supposed to do. I kept asking myself the same thing. Is this real? Was it possible that some random stranger had just handed me the keys to his entire life, expecting me to take it all? Did he really want me to live here, or was this some test I wasn't getting? 1,000 thoughts swirled in my head, but none of them made sense. It felt like I was walking in someone else's dream, a dream I had no business being in. I needed answers, but even more than that, I needed a way out of this fog, this strange, surreal place where nothing felt right. So I did what I always do when life throws me a curveball. I ran the numbers. But the more I thought about it, the more questions piled up. I had no choice but to go back and find him, to confront this, whatever it was. I couldn't just stand there any longer, lost in my thoughts, wondering if I'd slipped into some kind of dream. I needed to find him. I needed answers. I walked through the mansion, my footsteps echoing against the cold marble floors. The place felt like it was mocking me, all this luxury, all this emptiness, just sitting there, like I was the only thing that didn't belong. I searched every room on the first floor, but he wasn't there. I didn't know where to go next, so I headed upstairs, my heart pounding faster with every step. My mind kept racing. Was he going to show me something? Was I missing something? Maybe it was all a test, some kind of strange psychological game. Maybe he was waiting for me to do the right thing, whatever that was. I reached the second floor, walking past rooms that looked untouched, like they hadn't seen life in years. Everything was pristine, too perfect, too clinical, no warmth, no sign of any real living, just an empty house filled with empty promises. Then I found him. He was standing at the end of a long hallway, looking out of a large window that overlooked the grounds. He didn't hear me approach, so I took a moment to just watch him. He looked small against all that space, almost like he was drowning in it. He didn't turn when I entered, so I cleared my throat, hoping he'd notice me. When he did, he didn't seem surprised. He just gave me that same quiet, calm look, like this was exactly how it was supposed to go. I stood there, the words stuck in my throat, trying to understand what had just happened. You know, this is insane, right? I said, my voice shaking a little. I mean, seriously. I come here and you just hand me the keys to your life, your house. I don't even know you, and you're acting like this is all normal. He didn't flinch, didn't even blink. He just nodded slowly, like he had already anticipated this reaction. I know it's a lot, he said, his voice low, but you're the first person who's ever made me feel like there was still something real in this world. I don't have anything left, not the life I built, not the people I thought I could trust. It's all just empty. I don't need it anymore. I felt my hands tighten around the keys, the weight of them starting to feel heavier again. You're just going to walk away from all this money, all this stuff, just like that? His eyes softened, but there was something unreadable in them, a quiet sadness I couldn't quite place. It's not about the stuff. It's never been about the stuff. I've spent my whole life running after things that don't matter. And now I'm finally tired. Tired of pretending this is all I need. I need to know that someone can see what I'm giving them, that this won't be wasted. There was a long silence. I didn't know what to say. What could I say? He was offering me his life, his mansion, but it wasn't about money. It wasn't about the house. It was about what? Was it guilt? Redemption? Or was it just an offer to fill a void he didn't know how to handle? You really want me to take all of this? I asked quietly. You're just going to leave it all behind? He turned back to the window, his face shadowed. I don't know what else to do. You can have the house. You can have the freedom that comes with it. But if you take it, you have to promise me one thing, that you won't let this place become what it's been to me. Don't let it be empty. Don't let it become just another thing you fill with stuff. I swallowed hard, my heart hammering in my chest. The offer was starting to feel more like a weight, a responsibility I wasn't sure I could carry. But as I looked at him, standing there with his back to me, I realized something. He wasn't asking me to save him. He was asking me to save myself. And I didn't know if I was ready to take that step, but I knew this much. I was already too far in to turn back now. I stood there for what felt like an eternity, staring at his back, my mind spinning with 1,000 thoughts. Everything about this situation was wrong, yet it felt so right. I couldn't even explain why I was still here, why I hadn't just gotten in the car and driven away the second he handed me the keys. It wasn't the mansion, it wasn't the money. Hell, it wasn't even about him. It was about something deeper, something in me that I wasn't ready to face. I could feel the weight of the decision pressing down on me, suffocating me. What was I supposed to do? I turned to look around the hallway again, the huge space that felt both cold and infinite. The walls were decorated with expensive art, but none of it seemed to have any meaning. The house was just a shell. It had everything, everything anyone could want, but nothing of substance. No warmth, no soul. It was a perfect illustration of everything I'd been running from in my own life, the empty pursuit of more. I looked back at him, still standing by the window. He hadn't moved, didn't seem like he was going to. He wasn't asking me to save him. He wasn't asking for me to be his savior. But there was something about the way he said, "Don't let it become empty." Something in his voice that made me pause. It wasn't just the house he was asking me to keep from emptiness. It was everything in life. Don't let the emptiness swallow you whole. I was a Black woman, and I had been taught my whole life to hustle, to grind, to survive. But somewhere along the way, I'd lost sight of what I was really fighting for. I had gotten so used to filling my life with things, work, school, the constant chase for stability, that I didn't even know what I was supposed to be living for anymore. This house, this life he was offering, wasn't about the luxury or the status. It was about the opportunity to create something meaningful, a chance to find space, to breathe, to live without being weighed down by expectations. I stepped forward, breaking the silence between us. "I don't know what to do with all of this," I said softly, my voice shaking just a little. "I'm not sure if I even deserve it, or if I'm the right person for it." He turned to face me then, his expression soft but earnest. "You're exactly the person who deserves it," he said. "You're not here because you need this house. You're here because you're the one who can see what it means. You're the one who will make it live again." His words hit me like a ton of bricks. They made sense in a way I couldn't explain, but they also scared the hell out of me. I looked down at the keys in my hand, the cold metal reflecting the dim light of the hallway. I could feel the pulse of my heartbeat in my fingertips, and the weight of the decision settled deep in my chest. "Why me?" I asked again, my voice barely above a whisper. "Why would you choose me for this?" He didn't answer right away. Instead, he stepped closer, his eyes steady and calm. "Because I see what's in you. You haven't been consumed by all the things you could be, by the life you should have. You still know who you are. And that's why I'm trusting you with this. Because you have something that no one else has in this world, a real heart. And I think that's what this house needs." I stood there, the keys burning in my hand, staring at him, trying to understand the magnitude of what he was offering. It wasn't just a mansion. It was an opportunity to be something more, something real. And for the first time in what felt like forever, I felt a glimmer of hope. But was I ready to take it? Could I really step into this world with all its promise and uncertainty? I didn't have the answers, but I knew this. I couldn't walk away. Not now. I looked him straight in the eyes and said, "All right, I'll take it. I'll make sure it's not empty." And just like that, everything changed. The words were out of my mouth before I could think twice. "I'll take it. I'll make sure it's not empty." And just like that, everything shifted. For a second, I felt a rush of something like relief. It was over. The decision had been made. I was stepping into something new, something bigger than anything I'd ever imagined. But as soon as the words left me, they began to sink in, and with them came an overwhelming flood of fear. This wasn't just about a house anymore. This wasn't about keeping the place warm or filling it with furniture. It was about my life. It was about responsibility, about choices. The moment I agreed, I felt the weight of it all. A weight I didn't know how to carry, but somehow had to. I looked down at the keys again. They felt like they belonged to someone else, someone braver, someone more sure of themselves. The quiet echo of the house seemed to mock me as I stood there, holding this gift, or this curse, whatever it was, in my hands. He nodded slowly, like he knew exactly what was going through my mind. "I'm not asking for you to change anything overnight. Just live here, be here. Don't let the emptiness swallow you the way it swallowed me." I tried to nod back, but I didn't trust my voice enough to speak again. The house had a way of making everything feel too real, too immediate, too much. But then, just as quickly as the weight of the moment had settled on me, something else began to rise in its place. A fire, a spark, something I hadn't felt in so long. Purpose. I could feel it stirring inside me. Maybe it wasn't about saving the mansion. Maybe it was about saving myself. The house didn't need fixing. I did. I'd been running on autopilot for so long, grinding for survival, always focusing on the next step, the next goal. But this house, this mansion, it wasn't about the chase anymore. It was about taking a step back and finding the stillness I had been avoiding. I started to understand what he meant. The mansion wasn't just a structure of stone and glass. It was a mirror, a reflection of everything I hadn't been willing to face in my own life. The emptiness, it wasn't just the house. It was me. It was the part of me that had been numb, that had been too afraid to look inward. And now here I was, handed an opportunity to fill that emptiness, not with possessions or achievements, but with something real, something that mattered. But even as that realization settled in, a wave of doubt swept over me. Was I strong enough to carry this responsibility? What if I couldn't make it work? What if I failed? I turned back toward him, my stomach tightening. What if what if I can't do this? I asked, the vulnerability in my voice surprising even me. He didn't hesitate. He just gave me that same calm smile, the one that made everything seem like it would be okay. That's the thing. You're not supposed to have it all figured out. None of us do. But what matters is that you're trying. That's more than most people ever get, and you'll be fine. His words hit me harder than I expected, a grounding truth I didn't want to face, but knew deep down was exactly what I needed to hear. I didn't have all the answers. I didn't know if I could live up to this promise. But in that moment, I realized that the only way to figure it out was to stop running, to stop being afraid of the things I didn't know and embrace the challenge ahead. And so, I stepped forward, ready to take on whatever was next. I was no longer the girl lost in the hustle. I was the woman who was finally ready to live, to fill the emptiness with something more than just surviving. I was ready to live. The house became my new beginning, not because of its size or luxury, but because of what it forced me to confront. When I first stepped inside, I thought I was taking on something bigger than myself. But in reality, it wasn't the mansion I had to master. It was myself. I realized that the biggest transformation didn't happen when I accepted the keys or moved into the house. It happened when I finally stopped running from the empty spaces in my heart, from the parts of myself I wasn't ready to face. In the quiet of the mansion, with every room I explored, I began to find pieces of me I'd forgotten. And with each step I took, I started filling those empty spaces, not with things or achievements, but with purpose, real purpose. I learned that sometimes you don't have to have everything figured out. You don't have to have all the answers. You just have to be willing to step into the unknown and trust that what you're searching for is already within you. So, to anyone out there feeling lost, feeling like you're running on empty, don't be afraid of the spaces that feel too big. Don't be afraid to take that leap, even if you don't know what's waiting on the other side. Because sometimes the most important thing you can do is live, really live. And when you do, everything else, the house, the hustle, the life you're building, it'll all start to make sense.